Okay, bit of a different video here just to show something which I've implemented recently, which is kind of useful. So one of the challenges that you have when you're working with Azure or Azure Networking or anything in the cloud is to keep on top of all the changes that happen to the technical products. Because of the way in which cloud works, features get released all the time, and those features have caveats, things to watch out for. They have new features come online, and generally at a higher level, you can keep track of these features by watching things like the Azure Updates blog, following events like Ignite, etc., following people in the community on YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn. But sometimes there are minor points that get added to documentation, which if you're working with the technology every day, you might be interested in. So for example, if you're working with Azure Virtual WAN, you might be interested when the engineering teams or anybody at Microsoft makes additions to their frequently asked questions list, because that might be of interest to you, might change the way in which you design the service now or how you operate the service now. And despite us having all of our documentation on GitHub, that's publicly available, where you can go back through the history and see the various commits, etc., how this has been changed over time. As far as I'm aware, there's no great way of being able to monitor a specific file for changes. For example, if I want to go ahead and watch this file here, if I click the watch button here, I'll look for any updates to this very large repository of Azure Docs. So the updates to this specific file, the virtual WAN markdown file here, will get lost in the noise. And based on my research, I couldn't find a great way of monitoring a specific file in a GitHub repo for changes. Please let me know if that's possible. So the solution that I came up with was to sort of step back and go, well, is there a better way of just monitoring web pages in general? And it turns out there's an entire industry here of services and companies that offer you the ability to plug in a URL or FQDN, and all those companies will poll that FQDN, that web page, for updates and let you know when it's happened. And apparently it's quite popular for people that monitor, for example, when is this technical product coming in stock, which sometimes like monitoring stock levels for Black Friday and things like that. So when you go down that rabbit hole, you realize most of these services are costed. They don't cost very much, like $10 a month. But I wanted to know if there was a way in which I could do this for free. And it turns out, well, someone has addressed that scenario. There's a project here on GitHub called changedetection.io. Again, if you want the easy option, you can go ahead and sign up and pay $7 a month, and they'll manage and host this for you. But actually, it's relatively easy to run this yourself, and they offer it as a Docker container image. There's instructions here on how to deploy it. You see here, there's the publicly available repo where you can get the image from. So if you've got access to Azure, it's very easy to deploy this to Azure. For example, you go here, create a container instance, very lightweight service, will cost you pennies per month. Plug in the details, plug in the relevant repository information, which was from the previous page there. Go through the relevant sections in terms of networking, make sure you're forwarding the right ports. And what you will end up with is a Azure container instance, which is deployed, and you get a FQDN that you can access. And if you forwarded the right port, when you go to that FQDN, you'll get to your web page, which is your own hosted version of this change detection IO software. And once you're here, you can start plugging in the things you want to monitor. So for example, I've plugged in here the virtual WAN FAQ page, and I've created it as part of a virtual WAN watch group. And then every now and again, my container will go out and poll that website and go, hey, any changes there? Any changes there? And you can see an example here of one where last night, in the middle of the night, UK time, in the afternoon, Redmond time, some changes were made to this virtual WAN FAQ. and you can look here at the diff and it will tell you what's been added and what's not been added. It looks like we've made a change here to some sort of information in relation to these throughput scale units. Generally what I do when I know that a document's been updated, I will skip to that document and go to the GitHub page, look at the history here, and I find it, if I click on the commit, I find it easier to visualize the changes within the GitHub history page. So it looks like last night we made some changes here around irrelevant sort of limits, etc. But the point is, you can set up here. I've only added 4 pages here, but I'm going to go through and add the 50 or so pages that I'm interested in, so that I can very easily be notified when changes are made and keep abreast of the interesting additions to Azure Networking. Now, at the moment, for me to see these changes, I have to come to this website here and have a look at this dashboard. But the Change Detection IO project leverages another project in the open source community called AppRise to integrate with notifications. So there's a whole swathe of different integration patterns here for basically exporting your notifications. So for example, you could export this to a Twitter account or get an email whenever a change is made, etc. Post it to a Teams room. I think I'm pretty happy having this as a web page, a tab that I'll keep open. I might do some integration with like an RSS feed in the future, and if that's the case, I'll drop the link below. But yeah, I'd recommend, if this is something you're interested in, check out the links in the comment section below and give it a go. Try and deploy your own container to use the cloud to monitor how Microsoft builds the cloud. Okay, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.